Hello everyone, my name's Howard Yates and I lead the planning and business modeling capability at Thorogood, and it's my pleasure today to bring you this webcast. In it I'll be showing you how to take control of what is, perhaps for the majority of managing agents anyway, a pretty onerous, challenging, time-consuming process that is Solvency II and the Lloyd submissions. And for it I will be describing and demonstrating our solution, which uses both Anaplan and SQL Server. So our agenda for today looks like this. So we'll just complete introduction in just one moment, and then we'll go over our objective for the session before moving on to looking at what is actually involved in Solvency II and Lloyd's reporting, which will take us nicely to thinking about, well, what do we want it to be? What is our aspiration for it in an ideal world? Then we'll move on to our solution, and we will describe how that is put together with the two components, Anaplan and SQL Server. And then we'll have a demonstration, a couple of demonstrations in actual fact, to really give you a good sense of what is involved. And then we'll swing back to conclude. So just moving on to the rest of our introduction here. Who are we to be talking about this subject today? Well, Thorogood has been around since 1987, so we're quite an established consultancy firm, and we specialize in business intelligence and analytics solutions. So whilst that topic might focus predominantly on business performance and getting the most out of your business, it still strongly overlaps with the need to complete reporting submissions. There's a lot of overlap in the data content there. We operate globally, principally in the UK and the East Coast of the United States, and recently we've opened a new office in Singapore, which may be relevant to managing agents. In terms of industry expertise, we have a number of industries that we focus on that require specialist knowledge, of which insurance is an important one for us. You see on the right-hand side there some of our clients that we've worked with in insurance. A lot of A's there, but we do cater for other letters of the alphabet. And in terms of what we provide, well, we go from the very early stage stuff, a bit like today, where we're thinking about using a combination of technologies to solve a particular business problem, right through to supporting production systems. And of course, the important bits in the middle of implementation. So we work with a variety of vendors. We usually choose them for their importance in the marketplace or their capability. So we've got the big vendors right at the top there, but we also like to work with niche vendors that we identify as having unique and powerful pieces of functionality. So those niche vendors are no longer niche, really, are growing very rapidly. Certainly Anaplan is, and are getting increasingly large in scale. So let's move on now to just go over our objective. So objective of today is to understand what Thorogood's Anaplan SQL Server solution can do for the Solvency II and Lloyd's reporting, and also how the components Anaplan and Microsoft can help overcome the specific challenges that you find in this area. Okay, so what do we have to deal with? What makes it hard in this area? What would we like it to be? So to give I'm sure you're all very well aware what is involved. There's quite a lot in this area. I've given a flavor of it in the bottom right diagram there. A number of components, and each of those components has subcomponents, particularly, for instance, the QMR, which breaks down into QMA, QMB. QMA alone, quite a significant set of forms in its own right. And each of those submissions has its own different frequency. It's usually annually, quarterly, monthly, so there's complication there. Some of the submissions, up to 100 forms. I mean, what is useful though is that some of those forms may not actually be relevant to your business because you're not in that particular set of area of business, such as life insurance, for example. So that can limit your submission requirements to a certain extent. But all told, it's a pretty onerous task to complete everything, and that usually soaks up a lot of finance time, can take up inputs from other departments as well, such as actuarial. In addition, whilst we've got to make those submissions, we are operating under ever reducing timeframes for making the submissions and getting them in on time. But there's no compromise on quality, ever high importance of quality. And if all that isn't enough, then we're still going through a transitionary period right now where there is evolution in actually the reporting requirements. That does include on occasion some reporting requirements going away, but it's still another complication. Sort of related to all that submission activity, you could also think of group reporting as another similar type of process to go through, and indeed your own internal management reporting. So a number of different data sets here, all with their similar bases but often different, that we want to be running at similar times and want to be consistent with each other. How are we doing all this? Well, many agents run through a program like this. So identify a number of database sources. General Ledger and Solvency II database is very common. So Solvency II databases for things like technical provisions, very specific calculations there. And all that information then needs to be presented in a first cut report in the format of one of the forms. And from there, we may identify that we need to adjust, make some further manual data manipulations to fill gaps that we can't just pull straight out of our database, or other just straight manual data entry. And for many, the spreadsheet is the thing that is being used to collate and coordinate all these pieces of information to get it into the shape required. Now, all that is quite an onerous activity and ends up being pretty slow, resource intensive. It's got a lot of manual intervention, and therefore that means that it's potentially error prone. And also the nature of spreadsheets mean that it can be opaque as to what is actually going on, and even complicated. So what do we want to do instead? What would we like it to be? Well, our target state is really the opposite of all that. We want it to be really well controlled, we want it to be fast and efficient, and we want it to be agile enough to go and adapt to the new requirements as and when they emerge. So how can we do that? Let's talk about our solution and how we think the components can deliver that type of result. So first off, let's look at the architecture. Now, we need to start with the same data sources that you're already using, but this time we're going to pull it into a SQL Server staging area. And SQL Server's got an important role in that it's going to prepare the data for the next stage. And it's also going to hold all the final submissions once they have been generated by the following stage. Now, to do the staging properly, it's going to have to extract all the relevant data from all the relevant sources, and that might involve some transformation. So we might be talking data mappings and other sort of standard logical operations to get the data beautifully lined up for the next stage, which is going to be Anaplan. In respect of the archiving, that also places SQL Server very well for producing the extract files in exactly the right format for going being uploaded into the core market returns portal. So we've got all our data beautifully prepared in the staging area, and then we're going to pass it up to Anaplan using, again, well-designed and repeatable procedures. And what does Anaplan do? Well, Anaplan is the layer that's going to serve up all the submission forms with the source data as the first cut, and that's going to allow review and potential the change. And if there's going to be change to those forms, it's going to make sure that all those changes are recorded and validated, and it's going to wrap that all up in a workflow process. Anaplan is delivered through a browser, so everybody is able to access that information. And along the way, you might decide that you want to pull data into some of the Office tools that Anaplan connects to, such as PowerPoint and Excel. Not an essential requirement, but it's something that is there. So once we're done and we're signed off with our forms, we're going to pass it back into SQL Server, and then SQL Server is going to prepare the data in exactly the right format for Lloyd's and submit it through in one seamless process. So I've introduced Anaplan there. Let me say a little bit more about it and what it is and why it's so useful. So Anaplan is a lot like Excel in many ways in terms of the functionality that it can deliver. So it's got that business accessibility, but operates in quite different ways. It's multidimensional, for instance, unlike Excel. But it combines very well with a number of pieces of enterprise capability. And that's that combination that makes it so powerful and why it's shaking up so many activities being undertaken right now. And these activities are occurring in all kinds of different departments, and it's allowing departments to join up their data, become a lot more integrated in both their planning and their reporting. And there are a number of insurers now that have seen the advantages of Anaplan and are using it. These are just a selection. And you know, why is that happening? It's internet commentators like Mary Meeker, who writes on internet trends and technology trends in Silicon Valley, is really calling out that it's the modern way that activity previously undertaken in spreadsheets is being done, and it's the combination of the agility and the enterprise class, and it's providing a very disruptive force. So how does that get applied to our specific use case here, which is around the Lloyd's and Solvency II submissions? Well, taking that enterprise functionality, what's really important here is control, number of aspects to that. Security is an obvious one. Making only those things that people need to see accessible, and also stopping people from accessing things that we don't want them to access. Control manifests itself in the way that we make adjustments, the way that we are able to structure the data so that it can integrate with other systems. We want automation. We want to be any complex procedure needs to be repeatable and executable when we want it. And also we want to be able to collaborate across a team so everybody can work together effectively, something that Excel is a real sort of limiting factor with. So those broad strands of functionality cascade down into a number of different specific tasks, specific pieces of functionality, very useful. So Audit Trail, we'll see that a bit later. Adjustment controls, transparency, there's a lot of transparency in Anaplan, both in the logic and being able to see the provenance of data. There are procedures that you can build in Anaplan to make loading from source systems and also movement of data within the system. And then there's the workflow components, which again we'll see in the demonstration. And that all flows through into delivering the quality that you're after, having the evidence to support that quality, and the whole control and everything else drives the speed. So let's go and have a look at how that manifests itself. Just take you back to our diagram again. So it's the Anaplan Cloud based system that we're going to go into now and access via the browser. So I'm in a browser now. I suspect that I'll have to log in again, but here's where I was just a few moments ago we started, and I've got a number of different applications that I have access to. So we're going to focus our demonstration on the ASR area, but equally there are other applications that we can work with and be given access to, and each of those things deal with a specific task in hand. So we've got one for extended trial balance around the QMR and one for the syndicate business forecast. So anyway, I'm going to focus on the ASR, and I'm masquerading as Bob Bridge, who is part of the team that is putting together the ASR submission. And I'm going to work with this sub-selection of ASR forms on the left-hand side, chosen because there's a bit of variety in the construction of those forms. Obviously, it's just a subset, but the system can very easily scale up to cater for all the forms in that submission, and we can even segment the forms in many different ways. So one of which way we can segment them is when we look at the overall workflow. So here I've created a little hierarchy for all the forms, and I've got a little subsection for all the 240s, which I've allocated towards Alistair, and it'll be Alistair that is responsible for maintaining the overall status of each individual form, and that can be visible to myself, who is a sort of administrator overseeing the overall process. I can also email individuals responsible for different components based on the status of those assignments to ask them, well, why are things going so slowly? Anyway, back to our landing page. So I've described the forms a little bit. This landing page is intended to give me a very quick overview of what is happening in the overall submission. So I've got a column for all the reports that I'm going to access, one about the validations. So these are the validations that Lloyd's themselves will run on the data after it's been submitted. So we've duplicated the logic which they make available. And also we've got adjustments. So first off, I'm going to go into the reports using these buttons. And I'm going to go into the 002, which is around the balance sheet. So in this particular presentation of the balance sheet, you can see that I've got a big long list. Now, it's one way of rendering the information, but equally, I can get all the information, more information on a single screen, just like this. So I've got a different view for the assets. I've got one for the liabilities. But the beauty of having a system like this is that it's all the same data. So if I type in a number, the deferred acquisition costs, even if I go back to the other form, it's all coming from the same source. Also, a feature of all the forms is this version dimension. So I'm currently on the final adjusted for the current cycle. So this is saying it's adjusted because we start with a source version, and I can access source version, and that's coming from the original. So original is what we populate from our staging area with the data, and then we're going to adjust further to get this final version. I've also got a number of versions that show the deltas between different versions, and I've also got the versions associated with previous submissions. So I've got one for the previous year, one for the previous quarter. So there's great clarity on all the information, and that was going to help us in making comparison and becoming comfortable that we've got the right numbers for the submission that we're preparing. Okay, let's go back to the menu and look at some of the other forms. So we've got a 522 form, so a relatively simple form, that one. The 249, a bit more complicated, lots of nesting of different concepts there and sort of a hierarchy of information against our year of account. And then I'm going to go through to our 247. I'll come back to the 240 a bit later. But I'm going to move now on to looking at adjustments. So going through to the 247. Now this is a triangle formulation of a form. It's actually one of the forms from Lloyd's that they describe as a playback type form. So they will render this after you've submitted data in a more columnar fashion. Now this form has got a lot of different dimensions to it, so I can reorientate the view just by making a few selections. It's got my version dimension again, and we're also looking at both gross and RI in terms of claims. So an awful lot going on here. Now I'm interested in making some adjustments to this because I don't think the numbers are quite right. And I've also made some adjustments previously, and I might want to see what they look like. So I've got a button up here just to highlight some of those adjustments. And here it's showing, making a comparison between my original version and what I've got right here, and highlighting those things. So you can see I've got some round numbers there. Now I want to change one of those numbers. So instead of the 951, I'm going to just put in another round number of 1,000. Made a change. So my highlight report should have picked that up, and indeed it does. Now back to the version dimension, there's other ways to see what's going on. I can see a comparison between my final adjusted and my current original. And there you can see that it's picked up the 49 relating to that change. But I don't just want to leave it there. All these adjustments need to be explained. So I'm going to go on to my next screen now, based around the adjustments. So here we go, and it's identified that I've made a change. So it's spotted that the original source value of 951 is now gone up to 1,000, and again that 49 is there, and it's flagged that item as needing attention. And there are 3 of these items that need attention because they have not been appropriately signed off, and that's why I've got the number 3 at the top here. And that number 3, let me remind you, goes all the way back to the front screen. So let's go and deal with this particular adjustment that I have. These are the comments that have been signed off thus far, with a few different people working on this, but I want to sign this one off. And I do so over here, and because I'm masquerading as Bob Bridge, I've got just the Bob Bridge selection to say who has been working and producing this adjustment. Put a comment in, and then confirm that I want to sign it off. Before so, I just need to go up here at the top to an area that only Bob Bridge can reach. And that confirms that everything is ready for signing that off. And then I can run a procedure to post my comment and record it, such that no one else can, other than an administrator, can change. And there we go, a slight change. It's posted in today's date, and it's recorded that it's Bob Bridge who made that change. And once Bob Bridge has that comment, then no one else can overtype that until Bob clicks on the release to release it to another person. So we've got a lot of control around the adjustments there, and all that information, the errors have gone down to 2, and that is flowing through to the main sheet. And 8 is recording, these are the number of the non-red items that have already been successfully commented on. So I have a sense of how much work has been done. Now, it may come to pass that your source systems get updated and we refresh the Anaplan system, in which case new source values will come through this screen will pick all that up, and it might actually mean that the adjust value will go down to 0, as in the case of these ones. And that makes the comment in some way redundant, but we've just kept it here just to illustrate the issue and how the system will capture these changes. So back to the main screen, that's all updated. Let's look at validations. So for the validations, I'll switch forms and go to the 240. Let's first look at the 240. Now, a lot of the Lloyd's validations focus on the sign of numbers. We don't want anything that is negative. So here I've got two numbers that are negative, and I've picked them up as and flagged them as in a color manner. But we may want a more comprehensive view of all our validations that we need to run. So I've got a little validations report as well. And that's breaking out the number of warnings that I have and also the errors. So I've got an error down here. This is the text that we've just lifted from Lloyd's validation sheets and showing you what the test is effectively. So in our forms, we've retained the coding that Lloyd's uses in terms of numbers on the rows and letters on the columns. So I've got a failure here, and I want to know what that is. And we're going to make use of Anaplan's inherent drill-down features, which will trace where data comes from using the actual calculation that is forming that number in the first place. And that can be very useful for tracing all kinds of different pieces of information, not just validations. So I have a formula up here, which is written in Anaplan's language, which it doesn't take too long to understand what that means. But there's a control there of checking that this formula is actually an accurate representation of our description, which is from Lloyd's. So just to translate that as if it needs translation, we're going to the ASR 002 form, and we're looking for the line that is number 54, best estimate. Now that form has got two columns. We're selecting the column which is A, called Solvency II value, and similarly we're adding that number to 0002 and number 58, again with the column A, Solvency II value. And it's saying if those two numbers, when added together, do not equal this other number, which is on the ASR 240, line 25, then we fail the test and a number 1 will appear. And that's exactly what's happened. So here I've got 89704, and it's not quite reconciling. So in theory, I can type in 200, and then I pass the test. So I've got that reconciled. I mean, that's just one way in which you can get to the numbers. There's obviously a more manual way of just navigating to the respective forms. But there's a lot we can do in terms of pulling different pieces of information around, just as you can in Excel, but you can make it very repeatable and drillable this way. Okay. Now, having done various changes as I have, it's always good to know that there is a log that is happening behind the scenes that is monitoring everything that is going on. So I'm just going to show you that. This would only be available to an administrator, but it's a feature of Anaplan. It's the history log. So you can see, for instance, I have just changed a number from 300 to 200, and it's registered which particular user that was. You can see that I put in a comment around the adjustment, and I changed my number from 951 to 1000. So that record is running there, and it could be pulled out and exported and recorded somewhere if needed. But it's a good control on all the activity going on. So lastly, now that I've done some work on my form, I may want to go back to my workflow and say, look, I'm now happy with such a form, and I can complete that, and it will update the status. And by setting something as complete, it will stop me now from making further changes to the 247. So that demonstration is really about how we go from the initial rendering of a form and managing the validations and the adjustments. There is also a stage required in this solution for just getting the information right in the first place. So it's the sort of thing that we're doing very comfortably already in Excel. So I was going to demonstrate an introduction to Anaplan's raw modeling skills, really, the sort of things that Excel does, and I'm talking about calculations, creating perhaps views of data, entering data itself, and building little models. So rather than doing something very esoteric and difficult to understand, which often these things are to support the quite rarefied requirements of some of the forms, I'm going to do something a little bit simpler to understand, but something that hopefully you'll all be very familiar with, which is do a bit of modeling with some patterns and some premium. So I'm going to switch applications now. So go up to the top. I'm going to a different application. And first off, I'm going to show you the flowchart that comes with Anaplan. So Anaplan produces a flowchart automatically in respect of everything that is built. So it's self-documenting. And I have got 3 objects which are multidimensional data stores called modules right here. I've got one for my patterns, one for my ultimates, and then I'm looking to produce a phased profile written premium. So I'm going to make reference to my Contents tab on the left-hand side here, and I'm going to go into my Year of Account Assumptions. So this is a module, and it's multidimensional in the sense that it has years of account, we've got classes, we've got currencies. We're in local currency right here, and we've got versions again. And we've got some blue numbers and some black numbers. The blue numbers are the ones I can enter, and the black ones are calculations. I can see those calculations just by clicking on them, so they're up there. Depending on your security rights, they can be read-only or write. I can also go into this administration view where I can actually create a new account. And then to show you how easy it is to create something new, you just click in the formula button, and then you can point the different accounts to create a new calculation, and then it comes through. We've also got the ability to reorientate that view because it's multidimensional. So just by clicking on some of the different views, very quickly present the data in different ways. We've also got a pattern profile, which is showing how my premium gets written from month to month. And the task is just to get our ultimate phased. So here I've got a new module set up ready for that. And all I do is click again in the formula and then reference, first of all, my gross premium, and then I'm going to multiply that by my pattern. Formula is written there, and my numbers are calculated. And that's happening for every currency, class, combination. And then I could go on to developing a nice little chart or something just to illustrate what I've created. So that's a little introduction to raw modeling capability. of Anaplan, just to show you that it's got that business user accessibility to do those things that you're currently doing very happily already in Excel. And so you can combine that with the enterprise features that we've got in Anaplan to deliver the overall solution. So let me take you back now to the slides. What I was hoping to illustrate in the demonstration there is that you can create a lot of very specific modules to cater for the specific requirements of your submission component. So we worked with the ASR to start off with, but equally we can create others in a similar fashion. And we can move data between all those different components where it makes sense. So something like a trial balance, if you've got an extended trial balance within Anaplan, you could pump that information to all the different submission areas where it's needed. And in a similar style, you could cascade the use of Anaplan even further, because it's just a platform. Once you've got the platform, you can use it for lots of other things. So not just the Lloyd's and Solvency II, but some areas that are much more obvious to Anaplan, such as the planning side, business planning, SBF, financial modeling, or even some long-term strategic planning that requires a lot of what-if type analysis. And also a number of insurers are using Anaplan for reserving and using a lot of experience data loaded up into the system from which to conduct the reserving calculations. So let's conclude. So our solution, as we've illustrated today, can help you solve the sort of key challenges that these processes and submissions create. It can control the process itself, get that done, getting everyone's contributions together, and that contributes significantly to speed. This further speed also comes from inclusion of things like automation and the overall transparency, which makes it very easy to review and check that everything is working according to plan. And lastly, as a kicker, it's offering you a platform which you can go and deploy for other things and deliver other business benefits. So this overall will lead to a very powerful platform based on a solution for a variety of important components. And one of those might be the SBF, for which we'll be doing another marketing event probably in December and possibly January, and I welcome you to that. Okay, so that concludes our webcast for Solvency II and Lloyd's reporting today. I hope it's been useful to you, and if you want to discuss it further, then please get in touch. I'm Howard Yates of Thorogood Associates. Thank you very much for listening.